Joe Biden has selected a very strong pick to be the Secretary of the Health and Human Services Department in his administration. Uh, he has gone with Javier Becerra, former 12-term congressman turned Attorney General for the state of California and a longtime supporter of Medicare for All. In fact, has sponsored Medicare for All legislation four times in his 12 terms as a congressman representing, I believe, the state of California, including as a freshman congressman, as a freshman out of California back in the 90s, in the mid 90s, when Medicare for All was really not a mainstream popular idea at all. So this is significant. This is significant because obviously, again, he's supportive of Medicare for All, but also because of his ability to really weigh in and uh, influence this issue, acting in his capacity as Health and Human Services Secretary. So. The Health and Human Services Secretary, I'm reading from the New York Times, which I'll post a link at the bottom of this video, uh, oversees an array of waivers that states can use to cover new groups or provide different types of health plans. Because these waivers do not require congressional approval, they could become a crucial policymaking tool for the Biden administration if Republicans retain control of the Senate. So, again, going back to that idea of unilateral executive authority available to the president through the discretion of the various department heads that he selects. And in this case, the Health and Human Services Secretary, as you can see, he can grant the states, he oversees the waivers that states can apply for in order to be allowed federal funding either through Medicaid or through the premium subsidies from ACA recipients, or uh, through okay, so over here, some of the waivers can work through the Medicaid program, which has authority to allow states to cover additional groups or to provide enhanced health benefits. Others can go through the Affordable Care Act, which has a section that allows states to bundle their different sources of health law funding, such as the individual premium subsidies that residents would receive, or tax credits that would go to small businesses, and take those dollars as a lump sum to finance a different type of health system. States do have to meet certain requirements. They cannot increase the uninsured rate, and their plan cannot require additional federal money. So as long as the plan is budget neutral for the federal government, they basically have a wide berth to basically take these pools of funding that are already available to them at the discretion of HHS through the federal government, and go ahead and use it to create a funding pool that would fund a single payer system for all the residents of their state. So, obviously, this is all really great and really promising. I should also note that Javier Becerra is also an advocate of reining in soaring drug prices. He's a supporter of march-in rights, which is something I've talked about, which empowers the federal government is via statute that exists on the books to basically march in on pharma companies that are gouging the public on necessary drugs, life-saving drugs, and basically go ahead and seize the patents from them and make them available to competitors, rival competitors, who to put out generics at lower competitive prices. So he's also an advocate of, again, reining in, dropping the boom on pharma, which is obviously, I've talked about the way that they exploit our intellectual property laws that grant them 20 years market exclusivity on all these really important life-saving drugs, that then they find ways to improperly extend the lifeline of those monopolies And then again, people can't get insulin, people can't get life-saving drugs because you're charging $10,000 a pop. So Javier Becerra, all around impressive in terms of his attitude, his approach towards taking on private insurance as well as pharma, I have to say. And uh, there is actually currently legislation that's on the ground, that's in on the floor of the House from Representative Ro Khanna, Justice Democrat, that would actually broaden the funding pool that would be applicable here for Becerra to do what he's talking about, what he would like to do with states in order to allow them to do single payer on their own. There's legislation that currently exists out there that would basically broaden that pool and of funding for the states. It's called the State-Based Universal Healthcare Act of 2019, and it would be a landmark step toward a national Medicare for all plan in the wide berth that it would allow states, large states like California, New York, Oregon, Washington, to be able to basically move to single payer. In addition to using the Medicaid streams and the ACA streams, they could use other funding pools such as Medicare, CHIP. They could put all these different funding pools together and again go single payer. And that would be obviously a really big deal because the way that a lot of progress in this country historically has gone, if you look at the trajectory, is that the states are sort of the leaders. Actually, that's what happened in Canada. In Canada, they started. It was a particular province of Canada that in 1947 went single payer, and then 10 years later, by within 10 years, the rest of the country had followed suit. Saskatchewan, Canada passed their single payer system province by province, starting with Saskatchewan, and then yeah, within 10 years it spread, and that's generally been the way that a lot of American federal policy has come to be in this country. I'm gonna post the link to the bill from Congressman Ro Khanna because it's very relevant in actually, again, expanding this waiver idea. I've also talked about, again, obviously, the idea that Joe Biden has unilateral executive authority through the ACA, through Section 1332 of the ACA, which Congress intended to facilitate state universal healthcare systems, including single payer financing. Now, that actually has a precedent rooted in an incident that occurred in Libby, in Montana, where the citizens were exposed on a wide scale to an asbestos outbreak that contaminated the area, and then uh, exploiting this Section 1332 of the ACA, they were able to get, I guess, a waiver from the federal government to do Medicare for all. This was during the Obama administration, and they've had Medicare for all ever since. All the citizens of that town, regardless whether or not they were exposed to the asbestos, and they have it for the rest of their lives now. Um, so there's that loophole that Biden can exploit executively. Oh, again, he would direct his HHS secretary, which Javier Barcera would seemingly be open to, given he's such a strong advocate of Medicare for all historically. Then there was this also. There's also something through the Social Security Act that gives the opportunity for states to administer Medicare, an element useful to creating the single channel entity that, right? Uh, so there's that. Uh, David Sirota recently weighed in on those. So David Sirota weighed in on this idea of the waivers So if you guys haven't heard, there's a debate that's raging online on progressive Twitter as to how progressives should strategically go about wielding power in order to force the issue with Medicare for all in Congress. Our actual progressive leaders, AOC, Ro Khanna, Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib. How can the members of the squad uh, materially force this issue given the leverage that they have now that Speaker Pelosi is up for a vote for her re-election as Speaker of the House? Very unfortunately, she has the votes as of now and is expected to coast, given that she was not unfortunately challenged for her position of Speaker of the House by anybody. But given that vote is yet to occur and won't be made official, I believe, until the start of the next session of Congress, which I believe is something like January 6th or something like that. There's this demand that's happening online for the progressives in the Democratic caucus, namely AOC again, the squad, the members of the squad, but it's namely AOC in this case has come under pressure online to condition her vote on something tangible on this particular issue of Medicare for all. Demand that we the people get something in return for agreeing to reinstate or reinstall Nancy Pelosi after the Democrats performed so poorly down ticket, underperformed, radically underperformed. I think their majority in the House is going to be left somewhere between 4 to 7 seats, which is, I think one of the slimmest House majorities in about 200 years since the late 19th century. I'm pretty sure that's the case. Is that 200 years? 130 years, something like that. But so what can we get in return? So David Sirota weighed in on this matter and this great article that I'll also post at the bottom of this video. It's called "Here's What Medicare for All Supporters in Congress Can Actually Do." Progressives in the U.S. House have the leverage to make demands for both performative gestures and for substantive change. Will they? So AOC came under pressure online on Twitter from some progressive activists, some progressive commentators, Jimmy Dore, as well as football player Justin Jackson, running back for the San Diego Chargers. Progressive activist knows his shit. And they basically broach this idea of, well, hey, listen, now is the time to force a floor vote on Medicare for all. And AOC has sort of pushed back on the idea, not because she disagrees on the principle. Obviously, AOC is a very stout supporter of Medicare for all, as she is great with most progressive issues. She just feels that there are better ways to wield power, that there are better demands that the progressives should be prioritizing in the lead up to this vote, and she claims that negotiations have been going on behind closed doors in a similar fashion, but on separate, unrelated issues like a $15 minimum wage, a living wage, and to get progressives committee assignments on influential committees. Perhaps as committee chairs, which are the most influential, obviously, roles, positions in the congressional committees. If you could get progressive appointments to some of these committee chair posts, that would be huge. So AOC claims that, well, there's been all this other negotiations. Don't be deterred or don't be distracted into thinking or fooled into thinking that just because this particular issue, forcing a vote for Medicare for all, might not be uh, in my opinion sound strategy, that there isn't some other negotiations that progressives are actively seeking to extract. Now that's AOC's argument. On the flip side of that, a lot of progressives online are saying, hey, no, first of all, we don't have any proof that there's any negotiations going on, given how much ground progressives have ceded throughout these coronavirus negotiations over the course of the last year, how little they've wielded power, actually ruffled any feathers with leadership, with Pelosi and whatnot, referring to Nancy as Mama Bear and appearing with her on photo shoots and on the covers of magazines, etc. Barely fighting her, or when she was pushing back on when she was not, disinclined to push for the $1.8 trillion stimulus bill right before the election, which obviously was a missed opportunity on a grand scale, given that now we're negotiating for between 500 billion to a trillion after the election, when again, everybody has less incentive to act. So the progressives, Pramila Jayapal and Mark Pocan caved on the HEROES Act when they were trying to demand some really ambitious wage replacement program that just got shot down and swatted away by Pelosi easily. In fact, only Ro Khanna was the only progressive in the House that actually insisted that, like, no, this $1.8 trillion deal is on the table. And right before the election, for a Corona deal, no, that needs to pass. People need it. So basically, progressives have been very underwhelmed by the wielding of power, the effort to fight the status quo, to fight the establishment, Democratic Party leadership, over the last year. And so we need to see more from you. And David Sirota did this really comprehensive piece where he broke down all the really sound, really strategic ways that Democrats could go about, in addition to fighting for the floor vote, leveraging their vote for Pelosi's re-election to the speakership. In addition to, he's saying that, look, David Sirota is saying, look, that's really, their heart is in the right place. Everyone who's pushing for this, but you have to understand that at this time, the Medicare for All floor vote would very likely not have enough votes to get anywhere. It ultimately be probably helpfully clarifying in terms of you know making clear to us who we need to be primarying in 2022. A lot of Democrats will say that they support Medicare for all, like Kamala Harris before she ran for president, or Elizabeth Warren before she ran for president. And then when they come under scrutiny, you find out, oh no, they back off of it because obviously they take money from insurance lobbyists, or because they just are ambitious careerists and hacks who are obviously more preoccupied with like advancing their own career than with actually doing the work of social justice. But so he's saying, look, it wouldn't, it would be helpfully clarifying in the sense that, yes, we would have a better sense of who exactly needs to be primaried, who needs to go, again, Medicare for All is a 70% majoritarian issue, including between 46 to 52% of Republicans, depending on the poll, support it, in addition to 66% of independents, in addition to 86% of Democrats. So that this is even debatable, or that there's even still resistance against the Democratic Party writ large, is unacceptable. But he's saying, look, I mean, there are other more tangible things that you can do. You can, again, he's alluding to scheduling a vote on that bill that I mentioned that Ro Khanna's working on, that would further empower HHS Secretary Javier Becerra to go about creating that space for states to go implement their own Medicare for All programs. He proposes another really great idea of removing the Medicare for All opponent who chairs the key committee. So one of the committees that oversees most oversees Medicare for All proposals, Medicare for All type conversation, is the Ways and Means Committee, and the chair of that committee is Representative Richard Neal, who is extremely corrupt. He writes here, David Sirota, Richard Neal, who has played a singularly destructive role on behalf of his healthcare industry and Wall Street donors. He opposes Medicare for all, and he recently has tried to water down surprise billing legislation in the middle of the pandemic. So Pelosi can remove Neal as the panel's chairman, and next in line in seniority is Representative Lloyd Doggett, who is a much more progressive lawmaker. In terms of changing the actual power dynamic, changing the leadership of this committee would do as much or more in one fell swoop than securing a doomed floor vote. So, if you're not familiar with what he's talking about here, with Richard Neal has tried to water down surprise billing. Apparently, there has been a concerted bipartisan effort over the last 2 years uh, across three committees in both the House and Senate to remove practice, a really nefarious practice known as surprise billing, in which people go to the emergency room, they get some care, some unexpected care that popped up at the last minute. Maybe they had a problem, and then you get hit with thousands of dollars of fees. And it's like something that it gets described in this article from The Hill that talks about it, called Bipartisan Fix for Surprise Medical Bills Hits Roadblock with Powerful Chairman. So something that seems like a low-hanging fruit, like a no-brainer, a dunk on, in terms of, yes, we need to remove these massive surprise medical bills, keeps running into a wall in the form of Ways and Means Committee Chairman Richard Neal, who takes tons of money. I think he actually is the foremost recipient of insurance money of any member of Congress. In fact, he recently was pushed on this issue when he was up for re-election. He was challenged by a Justice Democrat named Alex Morse, who was really aggressive in accusing him of being being a huge recipient of Blackstone money. Blackstone is a private equity firm which deals in uh, which has opposed any efforts which has opposed basically this legislation that I'm discussing here, that's been in progress in the works for 2 years. Blackstone, private equity firm which deals with insurance companies. Neal, very unfortunately, won his seat, which he first gained in 1989. Some of these people have been in Congress way too long. It's obscene that someone this corrupt could serve this many terms for this long a period. But Richard Neal, who's insanely corrupt, has obstructed and blocked efforts from three committees led by Republicans in the Senate and Democrats in the House to go ahead and again reverse this horrible practice. The three committees, House Energy and Commerce, House Education and Labor, and Senate Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions, have in general been trying to, and now they're trying to attach it to the looming omnibus spending bill, which is the must-pass continuing resolution to keep the government funded through next year. So even with that caveat, even with that pressure of, hey, let's keep the government open, they can't get that attached because Richard Neal is running interference for the insurance industry. So he's got to go. So remove the Medicare for All opponent who chairs the key committee. I agree with that. Schedule a vote on a resolution demanding Biden use executive authority to expand Medicare. So again, this is just to reiterate my point that I've been sounding the alarm on, is, listen, Joe Biden, if you're going to be the president, you have to understand that you are not impotent. Whether or not your party controls the Senate, You are the most powerful man in the world, much less the country. You are the leader of the free world. Every president, especially our last two, have governed virtually exclusively via executive order. You have to understand and appreciate that your mandate, as per Article 2 of the Constitution, is to take care that the laws be faithfully executed. And if there is a law through the Affordable Care Act, as I mentioned, section, I think, 1212, something like that, that allows for states to have funding for Medicare for all, to be switched to Medicare for all. There's no reason that you couldn't then, as the president, broaden that out and apply that to the whole country, and you should do that. So, David Sirota, schedule a vote on a resolution. What that a resolution is not legislation. It's basically just, you know, it's the Congress coming together to apply pressure, to demand something from the executive. I've mentioned that on separate issue, Elizabeth Warren and Chuck Schumer teamed up in the Senate to demand that Joe Biden use his executive power available to him under Education Department's discretion to go ahead and cancel $50,000 of student loan debt, which actually I think is too low. He can cancel all of it, which I've talked about as well, and we'll talk about again. But back to Medicare for all. So David Sirota, schedule a vote. Get rid of the Medicare for all opponent who chairs the key committee, Ways and Means. Schedule vote in existing legislation to let states create single-payer healthcare systems. That's to Ro Khanna's point. He's got the legislation to help you get the ball rolling on that. Include provisions in year-end spending bills that create a presidential commission charged with crafting a Medicare for all program. So exactly like it sounds. President Obama created a commission to cut Social Security because President Obama is a right-winger. So why wouldn't he create a commission to cut Social Security? But progressives can flip the script and create a commission charged with evaluating other countries' universal healthcare systems and coming up with proposals to guarantee healthcare to all Americans. Granted, this is what Congress exists to do, but forcing a Democratic administration to come up with proposals could also advance the cause by forcing the executive branch to take the concept seriously. Totally agree. And then the last proposal that he floats is author a discharge petition to force a vote on Medicare for all. Discharge petition is designed to let rank and file members of the House circumvent normal rules and committee procedures to force a floor vote on an issue. Creating a discharge petition on Medicare for all would help clarify who actually supports the program and who is merely co-sponsoring Medicare for all legislation as a performative but empty gesture. So again, that's very much in the spirit of how we started this David Sirota thing, where he was weighing in on, well, should we force a floor vote on Medicare for all? That's very much again in that same vein with the forcing the discharge petition. So some great ideas here by David Sirota. Javier Becerra seems like he's going to be an unexpected surprise ally in the fight for Medicare for all. I'm not sure if Biden was aware that he was this like really that his new HHS secretary was so aligned with the grassroots on this issue. Biden has done obviously ascended to power by being out of step with and actively actually pushing back on the grassroots. So this is definitely a pleasant surprise. And obviously Biden has been emphasizing diversity. So, the symbolism of, diverse ethnicity and racial backgrounds. He's prioritized that in making these appointments. So Ryan Grimm was joking on Hill Rising with Crystal and Sagar about how, well, this might have been a lucky roll of the dice in the ideological lottery that is that sort of diversity identity politics that's being played by Biden in making these appointments. But yeah, so we have an ally here again. I agree with taking an all of the above approach. I think that yes, absolutely, the squad should definitely uh, should definitely come down on the side of no, no, Nancy Pelosi, you've done nothing for progressives. You've refused in your 2 years as speaker to hold a vote, much less I think a single hearing, or maybe there was a single hearing on this issue, Medicare for all, which again enjoys widespread support, the single most popular policy priority, policy proposal in the country at this moment, and one which, even in the primary states which Joe Biden cruised in handily, whether we be talking about Florida or Arizona or Alabama, Mississippi, Tennessee, or Virginia, handily was the preference of voters who came out. So again, particularly with the Democratic base, no excuse. If we're going to give you, if we're going to give in to your demands of, let's vote for you without even fighting for, without even advocating for someone to challenge Pelosi, which again, that in itself seems like an egregious offense. We may as well get something back, something in return for agreeing to go along with these politics. So, definitely agree that the floor vote, but then as David Sirota notes, don't stop there. Go ask for everything, throw everything at the wall, so that when you compromise, as usually works in negotiations, you compromise down to your actual position, which in that case could very well wind up being the single Medicare for all floor vote. If not, maybe we can get traction on removing Richard Neal as chair of Ways and Means, scheduling the vote on Kana's great California bill, which would expand funding for states to do single payer, as well as the resolution. I love the idea of the resolution in the House for Biden to grow a pair and actually tap into existing law under the Affordable Care Act to expand Medicare for all nationwide. The discharge petition, definitely, look, doing all of the above approach. We have nothing to lose. We're in a pandemic. 300,000 people have died. 14 to 15 million people have lost their employer-tied healthcare, their employer-based healthcare. We have no time to mess around. We've got to go in or go home.